Miss Bennett, please allow me to apologize for not receiving you properly just now. You were not leaving.
We were, sir. I think we must.
The year was 1995, and the BBC was about to accidentally create a sexual awakening for an entire generation, with nothing more than a pond, a white linen shirt, and an actor who didn't even want the job. Pride and Prejudice hit British television screens that September, a 6-episode adaptation of Jane Austen's 1813 novel about Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy navigating class differences, family embarrassment, and their own massive character flaws to find love in Regency England. Welcome to Pride and Prejudice, the miniseries that bombed absolutely nowhere, but somehow still feels like it came out of nowhere to dominate culture, where Colin Firth repeatedly refused to play Mr. Darcy because he thought Jane Austen wrote girls' stuff. A BBC executive called Firth in a snowstorm to tell the producer he wasn't good looking enough for the role.
I have no wish to deny it. I did everything in my power to separate my friend from your sister, and I rejoice in my success.
And the wet shirt scene that wasn't supposed to be sexy accidentally launched 1,000 Austen erotica novels with titles so wild they can't be mentioned in a family-friendly video. Today we're counting down 15 weird facts about a period drama where the two leads dated during filming and said it made their acting harder. 40% of England tuned in for the final episode, creating Darcy fever. And Jennifer Ehle refused to capitalize on her success by immediately joining the Royal Shakespeare Company instead of becoming a movie star. Before we dive into Regency England, hit that like button and subscribe for more behind-the-scenes stories about the shows and movies that shape television history. Let's start with number 15. Number 15. Colin Firth refused the role because he thought Jane Austen was girls' stuff. Producer Sue Birtwistle wanted Colin Firth to play Mr. Darcy from the very beginning. She'd worked with him on the 1985 comedy film Dutch Girls and thought he was perfect for the brooding aristocrat who falls for Elizabeth Bennet against his better judgment. Firth said no. Then he said no again. Then he kept saying no. Here's the thing. Firth had never read Jane Austen, not a single novel. When her books were offered as potential coursework at school, he skipped them entirely because he thought they'd be, rather, well, sissy. He admitted years later that he had this prejudice that the novel would probably be girls' stuff. The irony of having prejudice about a novel called Pride and Prejudice was apparently lost on him at the time. Firth genuinely believed there was nothing to play because the character doesn't speak most of the time. He told an interviewer he thought Darcy was just a guy who stands around for hours driving people to despair. Birtwistle kept calling, kept coaxing, kept explaining why he was wrong about the role and wrong about Austen. She was persistent enough that Firth finally agreed to actually read the book and examine the character more deeply.
They will join me tomorrow. And among them are those who claim an acquaintance with you.
That deeper examination changed everything. Firth discovered that Darcy wasn't just standing around. He was containing enormous emotional intensity beneath a reserved exterior. The challenge wasn't the lack of dialogue. The challenge was showing everything Darcy felt without saying it out loud. Number 14. A BBC executive called the producer to say Firth wasn't good looking enough. Sue Birtwistle finally convinced Colin Firth to take the role of Mr. Darcy. Problem solved, right? Not even close. Now she had to convince everyone else at the BBC that Firth was actually the right choice. BBC executive Alan Yentob was not convinced, not even a little bit. In 2013, Birtwistle recalled the exact moment she found out just how unconvinced he was. She was driving through a snowstorm when her phone rang. Yentob was on the line with urgent news that apparently couldn't wait for better weather or road conditions. He told her directly that Colin Firth was not good looking enough as Darcy. Let that sink in for a second. The man who would become the definitive Mr. Darcy, whose face launched a cultural phenomenon and 1,000 romance novel covers, was rejected by a network executive for not being attractive enough. Meanwhile, screenwriter Andrew Davies had his own doubts about Firth. Davies told the Sunday Times he was doubtful about him because of his gingerish hair. Apparently nobody at the BBC could look past the hair color to see what Birtwistle saw. Birtwistle ignored all of them and cast Firth anyway.
I hope we shall meet again very soon. Good day, Mr. Gardner. Mrs. Gardner. Good day, Miss Bennet.
She later said, We have the definitive Darcy in Firth, calling him just perfect in every regard. The BBC executive who thought he wasn't good-looking enough never publicly commented after the show became a massive hit. And here's the aesthetic irony. The actor deemed not attractive enough for the role became so associated with romantic desirability that women would later vote his wet shirt into museum exhibitions and television moment countdowns for decades. Number 13. Colin Firth and Jennifer Ehle, dated during filming. The chemistry between Colin Firth and Jennifer Ehle as Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth Bennet was electric on screen. Turns out that chemistry was completely real. The two actors started a romantic relationship during the 12-week shoot. By the end of filming, Firth and Ehle had become a real-life couple and stepped out together in public as a romantic pair. The media only discovered the relationship after the couple had already separated, which is when things got weird for Firth. But here's the surprising part.
Lady Catherine, I believe, did a great deal to it when Mr. Collins first came to Hunsford.
I believe she did.
Firth said dating his co-star actually made the acting more difficult, not easier. Most people assume real chemistry makes fictional romance effortless. Firth explained otherwise. I actually find that if you're involved with an actress that you're having to tell a love story with, it's more difficult, Firth told The Independent. I don't find it easy to draw on it. Your relationship, your feelings aren't the same as those of the characters. And here's the romantic irony. The real-life relationship that audiences assumed created the perfect on-screen romance was actually an obstacle the actors had to work around to portray Elizabeth and Darcy convincingly. Number 12, the wet shirt scene. Wasn't in Austen's novel and was never supposed to be sexy. The lake scene is Pride and Prejudice, 1995. That's not an exaggeration. When people reference this adaptation, they're usually picturing Colin Firth emerging from the water in a soaking wet white linen shirt. The scene appeared everywhere. Here's what makes this wild. The scene doesn't exist in Jane Austen's novel at all. Screenwriter Andrew Davies invented it completely. And when he wrote it, he had absolutely no intention of creating something sexy or suggestive. Davies later told the BBC he was genuinely confused when women started obsessing over Colin Firth's wet shirt and pinning his picture on their walls. It was a puzzle and a surprise because I just thought it was a funny scene. His actual intention was simple. It was about Darcy being a bloke, diving in his lake on a hot day, not having to be polite. And then he suddenly finds himself in a situation where he does have to be polite. The BBC executives initially opposed Davies' plan to have Darcy swimming at all. Davies originally wanted Darcy naked, which got rejected immediately. The producers discarded the alternative of having him wear underpants as completely ridiculous for the period. They settled on the linen shirt, breeches and boots as the compromise. Firth had a bit of the usual tension about getting his kid off, according to Davies, but filmed the scene anyway. Number 11, 40% of England tuned in for the final episode. Pride and Prejudice aired on Sunday evenings from September 24th to October 29th, 1995 on BBC One. The 6:55-minute episodes were also repeated each week on BBC Two, giving viewers multiple chances to catch up. The viewership numbers started strong and just kept climbing. Between 10 and 11 million people watched each episode during the original broadcast. For context, that's roughly 1 in 5 people in England choosing Pride and Prejudice over everything else on television. By the time the final episode aired, the numbers had reached genuinely shocking levels. The final episode captured a market share of approximately 40% in Britain. 40%. Almost half the country watches the same television program at the same time. This wasn't the Super Bowl, or a royal wedding, or breaking news coverage. This was the 6th episode of a literary adaptation about a 19th century romance. And 40% of England showed up to watch Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy finally get together.
This man and this woman in holy matrimony.
Newspapers started joking about Darcy fever sweeping the nation. The official A&E Network magazine summarized it perfectly. Critics praised the lavish production, audiences adored it, and women everywhere swooned over Darcy. So much, in fact, that newspapers began to joke about Darcy fever. By the time the final episode aired, 8 foreign countries had already bought the rights to the serial. The international interest was building before the series even finished its British run. Number 10, The Show, accidentally launched a wave of Jane Austen-themed adult content. Following the miniseries release in 1995, the New York Times noticed something unusual happening in publishing. There was a measurable increase in the number of people writing Jane Austen-themed adult content, specifically explicit romantic variations of Pride and Prejudice. These weren't subtle literary homages. These were full-blown erotica novels with titles so wild they have to be mentioned carefully. Books like Seducing Mr. Darcy. These are real published titles that actual people bought. The phenomenon didn't invent Austen adaptations or even Austen-inspired romance.
Excuse me, your parents are in good health?
Yes. They are very well. Thank you, sir.
I'm glad to hear it.
But something about the 1995 BBC series, probably that wet shirt scene, kicked the genre into overdrive. Publishers started cranking out explicit Darcy content at an unprecedented rate. Linda Birdall's Mr. Darcy Takes a Wife series, which started in 1999, self-reported total sales of 400,000 copies. That's nearly 500,000 people buying books about what happened after the original novel ended, with significantly more adult content than Austen ever wrote. And here's the literary irony. Jane Austen's most restrained, proper, buttoned-up romantic novel became the inspiration for some of the most explicit romance fiction published in the following 2 decades. Number 9, Jennifer Ehle refused to capitalize on her success and joined the Royal Shakespeare Company instead. Jennifer Ehle won the BAFTA Television Award for Best Actress for playing Elizabeth Bennet. She was in her mid-20s. The role had made her famous virtually overnight. Hollywood was calling. Movie offers were coming in. She was positioned perfectly to become a major film star. Ehle said no to all of it and joined the Royal Shakespeare Company at Stratford-upon-Avon instead. While Colin Firth's career was exploding into international stardom, Ehle deliberately walked away from capitalizing on her success. This wasn't a small decision or a brief sabbatical. This was a conscious choice to pursue classical theater over commercial film work at the exact moment when commercial film work was most available to her. Ehle was the only actor present throughout the entire filming schedule for Pride and Prejudice.
Easy distance, do you call it? It's nearly 50 miles.
What is 50 miles of good road? Yes, I call it a very easy distance.
She'd been chosen from 6 serious candidates to play Elizabeth. She'd read Pride and Prejudice when she was 12 years old. She understood the character deeply and delivered a performance that critics and audiences praised equally. And then she just left. No victory lap. No cashing in. No string of romantic comedies or period dramas trading on the Pride and Prejudice success. She went back to Shakespeare. Years later, Ehle would build a successful career on her own terms, appearing in films like The King's Speech, Contagion, and Zero Dark 30. But she did it without riding the Pride and Prejudice wave when the wave was at its highest. Number 8, Firth said, if he trained to be an astronaut, the headlines would still say, Darcy lands on Mars. Colin Firth's career exploded after Pride and Prejudice. The relatively unknown British actor in his mid-30s suddenly became a household name and international heartthrob. Every publication wanted to interview him. Every casting director wanted him for romantic lead roles. And Firth was completely over it almost immediately. While he didn't mind being recognized as a romantic idol, as a Darcy with smoldering sex appeal, he expressed repeatedly that he didn't want to be associated with Pride and Prejudice forever. In a 2001 interview with Now magazine, Firth summed up his frustration perfectly. If I spent 20 years training to be an astronaut, the headlines would still say, Darcy lands on Mars. Pride and Prejudice wasn't the most rigorous or challenging thing I've done. He was right to be concerned. The character followed him everywhere. When Helen Fielding wrote Bridget Jones's Diary, explicitly modeled on Pride and Prejudice, she imagined Colin Firth as Mark Darcy from the start.
Please convey my regards to Mrs. Collins and her sister. No, please don't trouble yourself.
When they adapted the book for film, Firth was the obvious casting choice. Firth initially resisted taking the Bridget Jones role for exactly this reason. He told interviewers he was hesitant to revisit the Darcy business because it would just reinforce the association he was trying to escape. He eventually accepted the part because he saw it as an opportunity to ridicule and liberate himself from his Pride and Prejudice character. Film critic James Berardinelli later wrote that Firth plays this part exactly as he played the earlier role, making it evident that the two Darcys are essentially the same. And here's the typecasting irony. Firth's attempt to escape Mr. Darcy by playing a modern version of Mr. Darcy just made everyone associate him even more strongly with being Mr. Darcy forever. Number 7. Helen Fielding created Bridget Jones after watching the wet shirt scene. Helen Fielding was a journalist writing a column for The Independent in 1995. She was single, slightly overweight by media standards, and watching Pride and Prejudice along with millions of other British viewers every Sunday night. When she saw Colin Firth emerge from that lake in episode 4, something clicked. Fielding wrote in her Bridget Jones's Diary column during the original British broadcast about her simple human need for Darcy to get off with Elizabeth, and regarding the couple as her chosen representatives in the field of shagging, or rather courtship. That column became the foundation for the 1996 novel Bridget Jones's Diary. Fielding has admitted she pillaged her plot directly from Pride and Prejudice. She created a modern single woman named Bridget, who falls for an uptight lawyer named Mark Darcy. Described exactly like Colin Firth.
But your good opinion is rarely bestowed and therefore more worth the earning.
Thank you.
When Fielding met Firth in 1996 during his filming of Fever Pitch, she asked him to collaborate on what would become a multi-page interview between Bridget Jones and Firth in her 1999 sequel novel, The Edge of Reason. Conducting the real interview with Firth in Rome, Fielding completely lapsed into Bridget Jones mode and obsessed over Darcy and his wet shirt for the entire fictional interview. Firth participated in editing what critics called one of the funniest sequences in the Diary's sequel. When Bridget Jones's Diary was adapted for film in 2001, casting Colin Firth as Mark Darcy was the only choice that made sense. The role existed because of him. He was playing a character created in his image. Number 6. A 12-foot fiberglass statue of wet Darcy now travels between English lakes. On July 9, 2013, something absolutely wild appeared in the Serpentine Lake in London's Hyde Park. A 12-foot fiberglass statue of Mr. Darcy emerging from the water, modeled specifically on Colin Firth, rising from the lake like a period drama sea monster. The statue was installed as a promotion for British television's UK TV channel. Because apparently the only way to promote British television in 2013 was with a giant sculpture of Colin Firth in a wet shirt from a show that aired 18 years earlier. But here's where it gets weirder. The statue didn't stay in one place. It made the rounds of several English lakes before its final installation at Lyme Park, one of the actual filming locations for Pride and Prejudice.
Miss Bennet,
I did not expect to see you, sir.
Lyme Park was already a pilgrimage site for Pride and Prejudice fans before the statue arrived. The exterior shots of Pemberley were filmed there. Dedicated fans would travel to Derbyshire specifically to walk the grounds where Elizabeth Bennet toured Mr. Darcy's estate. Now, those fans could also see a 12-foot fiberglass Colin Firth emerging from the water in perpetuity. The statue became an attraction within the attraction, a monument to a television moment that defined an entire generation's relationship with period drama. The Folger Shakespeare Library in Washington, D.C. went even further in 2014. They put Mr. Darcy's actual shirt from the series on display as part of an exhibition called Will and Jane, Shakespeare, Austen, and the Cult of Celebrity. Labeled simply as the shirt, the item was presented as a celebrity object, demonstrating the kind of fun that people have with Austen as an author. Number 5. The show captured American audiences at the perfect moment for Jane Austen. Pride and Prejudice aired on A&E in America, starting January 14, 1996. Instead of showing one episode per week like the BBC had done, A&E made a different choice. They aired the series as double episodes on 3 consecutive nights. This meant American audiences could watch the entire series in 3 days right at the start of the new year. The timing turned out to be accidentally brilliant for building Austen momentum in the United States. Emma Thompson's film adaptation of Sense and Sensibility was expanding into wide theatrical release at the same time. Thompson had written the screenplay herself and starred alongside Kate Winslet and Hugh Grant. The movie was a critical darling heading toward Oscar nominations. Rather than competing, the 2 Austen adaptations fed off each other. Sense and Sensibility primed American audiences for period drama and Jane Austen content. Pride and Prejudice delivered 6 hours of it directly into their living rooms within days of the new year.
It is beautiful. I think I could grow almost as fond of these woods and hills as you have, Charlotte.
One contemporary review noted, "Pity Emma Thompson's Sense and Sensibility, which opened in the U.S. shortly after Pride and Prejudice debuted." The observation captured how the miniseries had grabbed the cultural moment. The New York Times called the adaptation a witty mix of love stories and social conniving, cleverly wrapped in the ambitions and illusions of a provincial gentry. American critics and audiences responded just as enthusiastically as British viewers had months earlier. Pride and Prejudice won the Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Individual Achievement in Costume Design for a miniseries or a special. The recognition cemented its place in American television history alongside the theatrical film's Oscar success. Number 4. The series launched careers but also trapped actors in period drama roles. Pride and Prejudice made several actors famous and simultaneously trapped them in period drama roles for years. Colin Firth and Jennifer Ehle weren't the only cast members who saw their careers completely transformed by the series. Crispin Bonham Carter, who played Mr. Bingley, found himself repeatedly cast in period pieces and costume dramas. He later appeared in small roles in the Bridget Jones films, the movies inspired by Pride and Prejudice, continuing the cycle. Anna Chancellor, who played the scheming Caroline Bingley, became known for playing variations of that character in other productions. The proud, manipulative, upper-class woman became her type. Alison Steadman, who played the anxious and embarrassing Mrs. Bennet, was already an established actress when Pride and Prejudice aired.
Oh, well, I am so happy. A daughter married and only just 16.
But the performance reinforced her association with a specific kind of role, the fussy, overly dramatic, socially awkward mother. Even minor cast members found themselves auditioning for similar costume dramas and period pieces for years afterward. Being part of Pride and Prejudice opened doors, but often those doors led to the same rooms. The series was so successful and so definitive that later adaptations struggled to escape its shadow. When the BBC made Death Comes to Pemberley in 2013, actor Matthew Rhys knew he couldn't erase Colin Firth from viewers' minds as Mr. Darcy. Not only can you upset all those Austen fans with very firm ideas about Darcy, but you also have Colin Firth, who concreted the idea of Darcy in the national psyche, Rhys told The Big Issue. You mention Darcy and picture Colin Firth. Number 3. People magazine trashed Jennifer Ehle's casting. Pride and Prejudice received overwhelmingly positive reviews from critics when it aired. The adaptation was praised for its faithfulness to Austen's novel, the quality of the performances, and the production values that brought Regency England to life. People magazine was not impressed, at least not with everyone involved. In one of the most negative reviews the series received, people considered the adaptation a good deal more thorough than necessary, and not the best Austen on the suddenly crowded market. But the magazine saved its harshest criticism for Jennifer Ehle. Although the reviewer thought Colin Firth was magnificent, he absolutely demolished Ehle's casting in print. This wasn't subtle criticism. This was People magazine telling millions of readers that the female lead of Pride and Prejudice had the wrong face for the role, the wrong facial structure, the wrong look entirely. The review landed with a thud because literally everyone else disagreed. Jennifer Ehle won the BAFTA Television Award for Best Actress for the role. Critics praised her performance. Audiences adored her Elizabeth Bennet.
Well, the very rich can afford to give offence wherever they go. We need not care for his good opinion. No, indeed.
10 years later, the Daily Mirror compared 6 major Pride and Prejudice adaptations. They noted that Jennifer Ehle had been criticized for being a little too heavy for the role, but gave the 1995 serial top marks of 9 out of 10. Number 2. A British Film Institute poll ranked it 99th Best British TV Program of the 20th Century. In 2000, the British Film Institute conducted a poll of industry professionals to identify the 100 greatest British television programs of the 20th century. This wasn't a public vote. This was television writers, producers, directors, and critics ranking the most important and influential British programming from 1900 to 1999. Pride and Prejudice ranked number 99 on that list. Just barely made it into the top 100. 98 other British television programs were considered more significant or influential, than the adaptation that had dominated British culture 5 years earlier. The BFY attributed its inclusion to managing to combine faithfulness to the novel with a freshness that appealed to modern audiences. But clearly the industry professionals voting didn't think it belonged any higher than 99th place. This ranking is genuinely wild when you consider what Pride and Prejudice accomplished. It captured 40% market share for its final episode. It launched the careers of multiple actors.
Oh, you look very well, Lizzie. You'll never be as pretty as your sister Jane, but I will say you look very well indeed.
It inspired a wave of Austen adaptations and erotica that continues today. It created cultural touchstones that remain relevant decades later, and industry professionals put it at 99. 99. One spot away from not making the list at all. Programs like Fawlty Towers, Monty Python, Doctor Who, and Brideshead revisited all ranked significantly higher. To be fair, the competition was intense. British television in the 20th century produced genuinely groundbreaking programming across multiple genres. Period dramas compete against comedies, news programs, documentaries, and everything else ever broadcast. Number 1. Susanna Harker's mother played Jane Bennet in the 1967 BBC adaptation. Susanna Harker played Jane Bennet, the eldest and most beautiful of the Bennet sisters, in the 1995 BBC adaptation. When she was cast, the producers discovered something genuinely bizarre. Harker's mother, actress Polly Adams, had played Jane Bennet in the BBC's 1967 version of Pride and Prejudice. Mother and daughter had both portrayed the exact same character in BBC adaptations of the same novel 28 years apart. This wasn't a deliberate casting choice. The producers didn't seek out Susanna Harker specifically because her mother had played the role. They cast her because she was the best actress for the part. The family connection was discovered afterward. Adams had experienced the 1967 production when period drama adaptations were filmed and broadcast live or very quickly with minimal editing. The technical limitations and production standards were completely different from what her daughter would experience in 1995. By 1995, Pride and Prejudice was shot on location at actual historic estates, with detailed costume design, careful cinematography, and extensive post-production. The 1967 version had been more theatrical, more stage-bound, more limited by the technology available. Harker could ask her mother about the character, the dialogue, the emotional journey of Jane Bennet.
I'm so happy. It is too much. It is too much. Oh, why can't everyone be as happy as I am?
But the actual experience of making the adaptation was almost completely different between 1967 and 1995. And there you have it, 15 weird facts about the BBC miniseries Pride and Prejudice that accidentally created a cultural phenomenon with a pond scene. Which facts surprised you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let us know what blew your mind. Thank you for watching, and until next time.